Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast. As always, I am your host, Dan. If you're just bumping across this podcast, it's primarily 12-step recovery data. Um, that was the system that changed my life. I do have other guests come on and talk about their modalities and how they've gotten better. And I guess it was someplace back in 2013 or 14. A friend of mine had sent me a speaker tape link of a 5-hour speaker tape. And I had it up here a minute ago, and my thing started playing by accident. And it was Scott L. Prayers, Promises, and Self Forgiveness. And it's 5 hours long. And I know if I've listened to that one time, I've listened to it 24 times. And I share it with people all the time because something happened when I started hearing this voice that started prying into my hard head. And yeah, I even was sleeping to it and dreaming that I was with Scott, listening to him talking. And had a chance to have Scott on the podcast a couple years ago, and he's come out with a new book, and I think it's new. Uh, there's some other things in here of some quotes about some. This is also in my other book, so I'll need to go dig that up too. But it's Anger and Grief Relief, Scott J. Lee, and I will put a link to that in the show notes. But I was happy one morning. I woke up. I wake up most of the time happy in the morning, and I woke up and had an email from Scott talking about his new book, and I hit the link and bought it. And I thought this will be another good chance to talk to Scott a little bit, and I really do appreciate you. How you doing today, Scott?
Thank you. I'm doing fantastic and improving rapidly, and better for talking to you. Thanks.
Yeah, those little things that you say are all the little things that touch me, and I get a tickle out of listening to. I don't really know. I guess God wanted to send me a teacher and somebody I could hear, and your voice has come through loud and clear. A lot of my sponsoring is tailored after what I've learned in your tapes and those big long ones with you and Scott D. That would be like this is a whole day or two of taping at a conference, and just pulled so much from that stuff. Was there anything in particular? I started reading this book and I thought that I would read it and then get with you. But then when I got it, it's more of a toolbox than it is a reading book.
Yeah, I talk about just a little bit. It's anger and grief relief. Um, for over a decade, I worked as a counselor at an alcohol and drug treatment center. And one of the things I quickly learned is that there were people that had so much grief that they couldn't get into recovery because they had to have relief from it. So I went into a series of grief techniques that I have learned through the years to help someone through grief. You can't go around what you got to go through.
Yeah.
And what I do is I help them go through it. And it has been successful. I think I've had, over the course of a decade, I've had about 5 people I could not help. 4 of them simply wouldn't do it. And
Yeah.
I take any responsibility for that. Another one, there was a fella, I just noticed he seemed shut down. And I asked him about it. And he said when he was a child, if he cried, his parents spanked him until he stopped crying. And he was so shut down that I couldn't reach him. It was going to take somebody with more time than I had to work with him. But other than that, these processes have worked for virtually everyone. But I also learned very quickly that some people had so much anger overlaying the grief that they couldn't get to the grief feelings. So we had to get through the anger first. And as I've studied anger, I've discovered the source of all anger. I found its home. I've never been angry when I wasn't also absolutely certain I was right. So being right is a source of anger. All right, what's the source of being right? It comes from having past judgment. I have to judge to be right, to be angry. So judgment is anger's grandmother. So anger, although anger is a problem, it's not the problem. Anger is a
Mhm.
symptom. The problem is that I judge. A rather famous fellow once said, "Judge not that you be not judged." And so every time I'm angry, I violate that. It's kind of an important piece.
Yeah.
So, so what, as I began to gather what I learned here and put it together in book form, I put it in a form designed for mental health professionals to use one-on-one with clients or in small groups. And I thought anyone who's spiritually connected, who is serious about getting past anger and or grief, can benefit from this by working with one other person. So I wrote it as a do-it-yourself book.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
really like that. And
the
I know what you
first
mean
piece
about,
is to bleed some of the old energy off of that anger. When I find myself angry, there's always energy, always.
yeah.
And it has never served me well. I have never gotten angry and acted on that and later said, boy, I'm glad I got mad and did that. Never have had that experience. And so what happens is I get this anger. Well, it begins, something happens. There's a precipitating event of some kind. The boss comes in and rips into me, tearing me up over something that I wasn't even guilty of. I judge, he's wrong, I'm right, I'm angry. Bang, bang, bang. It happens very quickly. And now there's energy. And if I allow that energy to drive me into doing something, I wind up in trouble of some kind. Rarely do I manage to just calm myself down, which is what I need to do. I need to pause there. And I think God's waiting patiently in the pause. But I do something. I get angry in traffic. I come home and kick the dog. I scream at her, something. But I don't bleed off all the energy. And I still carry some of it in what we like to refer to as a resentment, which is old anger.
Yeah.
Resent means to refeel old anger. So I got a little bit of that. And now there's another precipitating event. And I go through this again. And this pouch of old anger builds within me. And somebody cuts me off in traffic. And I drive two exits past mine, signaling to him that he's number one with me, the universal signal for you're number one with me, which is a gross overreaction to a fairly simple stimulus.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are walking around chuck full of those old things, overreacting, and they don't know why. And that's the reason anger management doesn't work, is because they're trying to manage the symptom. And the doctor will tell you we can help managing the symptom. What we really need to do is work on the problem. And the problem is judgment. So, first through this process, I show how I got rid of my own old anger pouch, as for lack of a better term. I help people get through that and then make a series of changes in your life so that you stop judging. And when I don't judge, I don't get right. When I don't get right, I don't get angry. And it has reduced my anger dramatically. Perfect? Absolutely not. And absolutely not.
Yeah.
But dramatic improvement.
Yeah, you can see that. My sponsor and I were talking about it the other day, that like you can see that on people, and the reverse of that is that you can also feel this calm, steady source off of people who are not carrying that. And I look back over my life and my ventures around trying to deal with this disease I got. I felt myself always attracted to those people who had that solid calmness to them. Wasn't like they're not like dead. They're not, but they have, it's a glow that I see on them. And I get with what you're saying. I've come across, the universe has sent me a lot of men thinking I could help them. And as you said, vast majority of them, these tools we use work very well, and you don't have a lot of trouble. But I've run into somebody once in a while and that's hit me like a ton of bricks when I thought about actually two particular people in the last couple of years of their anger and their unresolved grief, uh, as like was like cellophane that wouldn't let the tools I have get in. It just blocked them. So, I like to have some more tools in my toolbox, and and what you're doing in here, some of them, when I read through, is actually physically expressing this energy you're talking about to get it moving, right?
Yes, literally bleeding off some of the physical energy. I always ask you, do you have any physical reason why you couldn't do strenuous physical activity? If you got a heart condition, if you got a dislocated shoulder, if you got something, because we're going to do some of that to bleed that off. I'm surprised frequently. What I finally learned was I'm not going to do a grief workshop till we do anger. Even if you don't think you're angry, I don't care. We're going to do a grief. We're going to do an anger workshop because everyone builds some up. Um, I got this from a gifted therapist friend of mine years ago. We were chatting, and he said everyone builds up frustration from won't that idiot get out of the way? Can't that jerk get off my bumper? Can you believe we elected them? Won't she shut up about the money? Can't those kids? We all build up some of it, and you got to bleed it off. What I thought was, okay, wise guy. What I said was, what do you do? And he said, I throw eggs. And I thought, at passing cars, I mean, throw eggs. Could I have a little more detail? He said, well, yeah. I've got a place I go and I rear back with my best fastball pitch. I throw raw eggs against a block wall. I said, how many does it take? He said, about 18. I said, how often do you do that? He said, about once a month. And I got a hose, I clean it up. And he says, as I do that, I growl from the depths of my soul.
Mm.
And that's important. I said, okay, I like the concept, but the eggs are not calling my name. What else have you got? And he said, well, punching a speed bag. Well, I don't have the coordination for that. He said hitting a baseball in a baseball batting cage is a good one. Driving a golf ball, not on a golf course, that can be very frustrating, but on a driving range. Driving a nail, chopping wood. When he said chopping wood, I flashed back to my early teens. I was a patrol leader in the Boy Scouts. We'd go on a camping trip. I can't get the boys on my patrol to unload the truck, unpack the groceries, dig the latrine, pitch the tent. Tell them you're going to chop wood. They line up. There's something in us that knows we need to do impact. And the one that I use now is I use a plastic toy baseball bat, about 3 feet long, and beat up a couch, an easy chair, a cushion of some kind. And I have them wear gloves, safety glasses, and I tell them I want you to take a full stroke on this. Now, if you've got an individual you're angry with, I want to hear the very worst language you've got. I want to hear you talking about their mother. I want to hear it all. I want you to dog cuss them. I want the worst thing you got. Add impact. You son of a add impact. And I want you to be as loud as you can be and swing as hard as you can swing. And I'm gonna yell at you while you're doing it because you can't get loud enough. You can't swing hard enough to please me.
Mm.
Frequently, with the men, it runs about half the time. With women, it's more like 80%. Several strokes into that, they'll begin to cry. And I don't mean just kind of weep. I mean snot sling and cry. Really get into it. It is just so common that they break through that anger and get to the grief that underlays it. It's a powerful, powerful thing.
I remember listening to Bob Earl and him talking about going out and beating a body bag with his wiffle ball bat
Yeah,
to get that energy moving out of him. He's another one that I really like listening to for whatever reason. I could hear his
yeah, me
voice.
too.
I
He's
could
a
hear
great one.
yours.
But
I
that, go ahead.
have his birthday marked in my calendar still, and I wish him happy birthday every year it comes around. Just come around in December. But that wasn't, my understanding was that he was progressive enough that a lot of people couldn't hear him back in his time.
Yeah,
That we've come a long way in just a few years with this stuff, addressing our trauma and doing that kind of stuff. When he kind of got kicked around for even thinking about doing inner child work.
yeah. I think this stuff, some of this stuff is so critically important. When we build up this anger, um, I'm told my old anger will kill me. Yet, how do I get rid of it?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is the only way, but this has worked well for me. It's worked for almost everyone I worked with. And then when we bled off that energy, I'm going to ask them to make some changes. And one of them is I'm going to ask them to forgive these people.
Mm.
And and if you don't have someone that you're angry with, I can't have you cussing yourself. If you're the one you're mad with, we're not going to do that. We
Mm.
just use a vowel sound. Ah. But if you got someone in particular, yeah, let's hear it. And then I'm going to talk to them about the forgiveness process, and you'll probably recognize it. What I haven't done is write down the names of everybody you've ever been angry with. Think about the two worst things you ever did, and acknowledge that you were spiritually sick when you did that, and therefore possibly these people were spiritually sick. And then I want you to start praying for them. I want you to schedule ballpark 30-minute periods a week. And a schedule's a schedule, like 9 o'clock at night on Monday. That's a schedule, 30 minutes. Begin by talking to God about those two worst things you did and how much you crave his forgiveness. And then start praying good stuff for him. The first name on the list, George. God, I ask you to bless George, that he doesn't go bald, that he wins the Tennessee lottery, gets promoted at work, gets a new Cadillac, gets a new big house, gets a new big boat. His kids go to school on scholarship, don't give him any trouble. He's healthy as a horse. His wife is a fabulous lover and chases him around the house all the time. His lawn grows lush and green, but grows so slowly and lasts a moment once a year. Be creative. And then ask yourself the simple question: do you mean it? Yes or no? How do you try to mean it? How do you know you're supposed to actually mean that? If you do, put a check mark and go to the next name. If you don't, go to the next name. Don't stay there. When you get to the end of the list, start over for the ones that aren't checked. There's a fabulous prayer. It's one of the best known prayers, probably in Christendom at the very least. And one of the phrases is, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive. I think what that says is, God, if I don't forgive them, don't you forgive me.
Mm.
I'm 81 years old. I cannot, on the day that I pass from here into that other side, pay the price of having my soul stand naked before my Creator, guilty of hating one of his other children. And it doesn't matter what they did. I can't pay that price. And so what I've discovered is that forgive is not something I can do, something I have to receive. There are two kinds of verbs in English language, transitive and passive. Transitive is something I do, like I pick up this phone. Passive, something happens to me, it's raining, I go outside and I get wet. If you look up the verb to forgive in your dictionary, it'll say it's transitive. It's not, it's passive. It's something I had to open up to receive. You ever hear anybody say, I forgive, but I'll never forget?
Yeah.
That ain't forgive, kids.
No.
Forgiveness is a state of spirit, and I can't change my spirit, but I can change my actions today. What I was told was that these old angers are like ice around my heart. And what we do, and the ice has a thickness based on the severity of the events, how long ago they happened, how much I've nurtured this old anger. And what we do here with this prayer is we hold the icy heart up to the sunlight of the Spirit. Sunlight will melt ice. The sunlight always wins. It's a question of time. Question of time. And what happened for me through this process is I received the gift of forgiving some people who abused me as a child, of forgiving some older boys that had sexually abused me when I was in my early teens, and everybody else. But forgiveness is not something I did, it's something I opened myself up to receive. And that's what this prayer does. And it's an astonishing process. The other thing I asked them to do is to no longer say anything negative about anyone. We're out of that business now. We're going to be serving a God of love. So we have to act like it all the time. It's not a part-time job. So I asked them to make a bunch of other changes. Here's one. Somebody puts a blinker on near you in traffic, let them in. Every time, every time. I had to stop watching the news because I get angry, and I don't want to be angry, whether I believe them or not. I sit out of political discussions, even with people that I agree with, because it tends to incite my anger and my judgment. I recommend they use no alcohol at all, and no drugs unless they're absolutely prescribed and needed. Minimal caffeine and sugar. Both of those things tend to accelerate what's going on inside my head. What's going on inside my head is not always good for me. Get plenty of rest. Leave early when you go somewhere so that you can relax on your way in, so you're not bashing yourself. Spread joy is one of the great ones for me. I'm in Nashville. We've had over 30,000 people a year moving to my town for the last decade. We got traffic jams that we never had before. My history is to sit in a traffic jam and just get mad. What I was taught, and I carry them, is I carry clown noses in my vest pocket, and I put one on when we get stopped, and I drop my window, and I begin to blow bubbles out the window. Now, the bubbles attract the other driver's attention, and they look and see the clown nose and start laughing. And laughter's contagious. I start laughing. We're still stuck in traffic, but I've turned it into a party. It
Yeah.
changes me. I also carry them if I'm walking through an airport or grocery store and there's a mom there with a couple of kids. And those are good kids. There's no question about it. They're just having a hard day. I put on that clown nose and get 6 or 8 feet away and start blowing bubbles. The crying stops right now. And kids will lock onto bubbles like a good bird dog coming on point. And I go up to the mom and I say, I'm a stranger. I don't want to give anything to your children, but if the kids can have the clown noses and bubbles, I'd like to donate them. In 2024, I had one mother turn that down and only one. All the others accepted. What happens when you do that? It lifts those kids' spirits. Who else? Mom. Who else? Everyone that saw it. Who else? Me.
Yeah.
If I'm sloshing love and joy all over you, it splatters onto me every time.
Yeah.
There's no way to block it. There's no way to block it. Those are important changes for me.
Yeah, that smile. Always they talk about what's your most powerful muscle, and I still think my smile is my most powerful muscle. I can make things happen just by smiling. And I walk around with a smile on my face today, and even on purpose, and again, it changes me. It's how I'm carrying myself. And if I'm smiling, I can't, you know, I'm automatically in a good mood. I'll laugh
That
at myself.
that's another thing. I did it with you earlier, and it's how you greet people. A radio personality in Nashville has made popular this terrible thing about better than I deserve. I don't believe that for a second. We're God's kids. We deserve great. So I've got a collection of things that I like to say when somebody says, how are you? So I'm fantastic and improving rapidly. I'll say, if the genie pops out of the bottle and says 3 wishes, I'm going to have to tell him to take the afternoon off and call me tomorrow. I got nothing to ask for. Gee, wow, I think I must be God's favorite kid. I'm blessed almost to tears. And the one I did with you, I'm doing great and so much better for talking to you. I got that from an old friend of mine named Ed Mutum. You may
Mm,
recognize that name.
I think
But
so.
it's an opportunity to lift other people's spirits. I try before I answer the phone to put a smile in my voice,
Yeah.
answer with a smile in my voice, constantly looking for ways to lift other people's spirits. We're still talking about anger, interestingly enough, because this gets me out of the anger business, and I don't want to be in that anymore. The other thing that this book is about is grief. And grief is a natural state. Everyone's going to go through it at some point. And and I think it's so important to go through it, to give yourself permission to go through it. Cry the tears. Um, One of the things that's in the book is I teach people to cry. Many years ago, I realized I had not cried in over 20 years. And I was seeing a friend of mine, a very masculine man, crying pretty often. And I asked him about the tears. And he says, somebody says something beautiful that touches my heart and I weep. And I said, I can't cry. He said, I will teach you. It took me about a year to get the first tear out. I've learned a lot about it since then. And I've had the privilege of teaching a lot of people to cry. When I started this, I thought this is going to be like 98% men and about 2% women. It's about 60-40. I'm astonished at how many women are unable to cry. And it's for the same reason. If you don't quit that crying, I'm going to give you a reason to cry. That's how most of us learn not to cry. The fact is, no baby was ever born unable to cry. None. So the inability to cry has been learned. It can be unlearned. It just
Yeah.
can't. I always warn the men too, gentlemen, if you start crying at appropriate times and places, you're going to attract a lot of women. Do not call me and complain about this. They're sick of that John Wayne act you're doing and they see right through it.
Yeah.
But to do proper grief work, I think you've got to have the tears. It's poetic and forgive me, but I heard this and I really like it. The tears wash the windows of my soul.
Mhm.
And I think that's what they do. I
Yeah.
think that's what they do. And grief is a very natural thing. And so what I do with them, First, we're going to do the anger workshop and bleed off some of this anger energy. And then I ask them, what are you grieving? Have you lost a parent, a child, which is the heaviest one you can get, I'm told, a pet, a relationship? Did you lose your childhood? So many people I've worked with through the years, at age 9, the parents separated or one of them died, and the other parent conscripted them into being the second parent. And they had to give up their childhood and act as an adult because of younger siblings. So they had to grieve the loss of their childhood. And this has worked well with them. As long as they're able to cry, I always ask them that, are you able to cry? And what we do is we sit down, we invite God into the process, and I present them with about 5 different colors of pens and ask them to pick one. After we've selected which grief they're going to do, some have multiples. I want to know which one is the worst, which one weighs the heaviest on you. And now we're going to write that person a letter. And I use a college rule legal pad and start at the very top. And you're going to write them a letter, and I will coach you. And we invite God to the process. And in that process, I ask God to make me perfect for this time. And I believe He does. Make me an open channel for this child and take me out of it. And I just know. I cannot explain it. I just know. And if they write 3 or 4 lines and they're not crying yet, I'll reach down, I'll stop them. I reach down and cover the pad with my hand and say, tell me what you've written. And sometimes that'll start them crying. Or we'll find out that they're not, because they're not doing what I've asked, which is talk about your sadness, talk about your loss, talk about how hard it is that they're no longer here, whatever it is. Some of them are back into anger, or they just haven't gotten to what they're doing. Usually there's crying. And as soon as they're able to cry, and I've already told them this, I'm going to stop and we'll take the pen away. I want you to cry as long and hard as you can. If you want me to hold you, reach toward me and I'll come hold you. I think this is important too. And what I teach in this book is, if you're doing this with a friend and they start crying, the way you hold them is you get a firm grip and you don't move. I see people moving their hands on someone's back or gripping them or whispering in their ear. Anything you do besides a firm grip will distract them from what they're trying to do. Everything else is wrong. I just hold them or I just let them cry. If it's someone I'm close to, I offer to hold them and I take their word. And I usually know when they're through with this particular grief. Comes like waves on the ocean. Initially, they're tall, thick, and very close together. Over time, they dissipate. And this process accelerates that dissipation. That's what this is about. But the individual grief waves come and they will last anywhere from 10 or 15 seconds to maybe 2 to 3 minutes. I think maybe the longest I ever saw was around 5 minutes at the most. And then it's just passed. I can usually tell, usually there's a deep breath. And I count to about 3 and say, has it passed? They say yes. If they shake their head no, I leave them alone. But usually it's passed. I give them the pen and let's write some more. And I do it until I get the sense that we have enough. And then I ask them to sign it love. And usually there's another cry. If it's someone who's died, I say, what did they call you? Did they call you Spiffy or Jackie or whatever they called you? Sign that. And as they finish signing it, I say, you're never going to hear them call you that again. Their voice is dead. Usually there's another big cry there. If there's not, it will be because they've cried well through the process, but that usually gets one more. And then I take them outside and I've got a lighter with me and I have them burn it. And I hold it, they light it. And I say, we're not destroying this, we're sending it in smoke. If it's the childhood, we're sending it up into the universe. And we burn the ink part. I hold the bottom of it and we light the top and let it burn down until we're down to maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches with a char across one side and blow it out. And I give it to them and I say, this is your copy of the letter. And I will not be asking them what you do with it. Some keep it, some you can tell it's a treasure, some cry when you hand it to them. it's a big deal. And then I ask them to try to put this out of your mind for a day or so, and then go for a walk with this person. Literally ask them to go for a walk. Hold your hand up like you're holding their hand and go for a walk with them. You'll know if you need another letter. If they've
Mm.
cried quite a bit, they usually don't. I also recommend a book, Embraced by the Light. It's a near death experience book. I've been studying that for over 40 years, and it's the one I got the most out of. It is a very freeing thing. Most people are terrified. Death has a bad reputation.
It does.
It does. And yet, if you'll think about it, death was invented by the very same God who invented smallmouth bass, ice cream, and sex. Good job, by the way. Thank you. Same guy. I've seen his work, and it is therefore good. What happened for me is I learned to stop thinking myself as this body that you see. I'm not the body. I'm the spirit that inhabits the body. Yet our language, I have gray hair, I have blue eyes, I'm 6 feet tall. Our language sounds like I'm the body. I'm not.
Right.
And when I think of myself as the spirit that inhabits the body, if I think of myself as the body, death looks like the ultimate bad deal. If I think of myself as a spirit that inhabits the body, death becomes moving day. And I'm going to move out of this beat up efficiency apartment into a universe and more. There's a there's a storm on planet Jupiter twice the size of Earth. I want to see it up close and I want to know why it's there. I want to travel the stars. I want to walk through the pearly gates and hug my mother again and tell her what a great mom she was and thank my dad for all I learned. And thank
Mm.
some guys like Sandy Beach and Don Fritz and Jerry Crow, Cliff Roach, and I don't have time, Keith Lewis. I don't have time to name all the ones that touched mine so deeply. There's nothing to be afraid of here. It was invented by the God of love and it is therefore good. And that changed it for me. And I think that idea has helped an awful lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm glad that I had a lot of hang up with death that I can remember when I was a kid. One thing was my mom started getting sick and I started getting scared that I was going to lose her about once a year for the next 30 years. She kept on going for quite some time, considering the things she had. But I couldn't, I would have nightmares and stuff and wake up thinking about it. For whatever reason, this impending fear of death. And I was able to reframe that to thankful to my mentor uh into something good. And that's going, well, I don't want to go yet. I'm okay right now, but I do look forward to the next adventure rather than those old thoughts that I had about it.
That's interesting. You use the word adventure. That's exactly the word that I use. I think it's the
Probably
great.
picked it up from you.
Well, I think it's the great adventure. I'll tell you something else too that then I put in here is preparing to grieve.
Mm.
Your older parent is it's approaching the end, so you're prepared to grieve. How do you do that? Most people think they're preparing to grieve in the sense that because they have quote prepared to grieve that they're not going to grieve. The
Mm.
way you prepare to grieve is you give yourself permission to be pieces all over the floor. You give yourself permission to bawl. And you invite, I think, your one or two closest friends and say to them, I'm about to enter into a grief and I'm going to need your support. I'm going to need you to hold me while I cry, not try to talk me out of my feelings. Don't tell me they went to a better place. None of that stuff helps. None of it does. Just hold me while I cry and I will obey you. If you tell me it's time to eat and I say I'm not hungry, you say I didn't ask you to be hungry. I asked you to eat something. It's time for you to take a shower. I don't care if you feel, I didn't ask you if you felt like taking a shower. Take a shower. I will obey you because that's how you prepare to grieve. You give yourself permission to go through the process and you get your team around you and get them ready to do the things you will need for them to do while this is going on.
Yeah, that's a great tool, great way to, these are tools that just aren't out into the world that I know of. That I don't know. I've never heard anybody say that.
Well, that's why I was so excited to write this book, is I realized that I've been given these gifts. I've seen them work for literally hundreds of people that I've had the privilege of working with. So I know they're real. And I thought, I want to share this with as many people as I can. So the best way to do is to write this book. So
Right.
something else that's in here is a conflict resolution technique based on the St. Francis prayer. This is
Hmm.
something else I think is really, really a beautiful gift. Um, and it's based on the idea that I don't want to be right. If I get in conflict with someone I'm close to, I don't want to be right. What
Mm.
I want is for them to know that I heard them, that I love them, that I care about them. That's what I want.
Mm.
And my second wife and I used this very effectively for a long time. It was not the lack of this technique that eventually broke us up. But so here's the way it would go. She would say, we need to use the St. Francis thing. And I could say, not right now, but I can't say not today.
Mm.
We pick a time today, turn everything off. We sit down and she says, okay, on Tuesday when you played golf with Fred. Now, here's the truth. I ain't played golf in over 2 years. I don't know anybody named Fred. My response is, okay, on Tuesday when I played golf with Fred, did I get that right? Because if I start arguing with her details, we're right back into loggerheads, and that's not the mission. My mission is for her to know I heard her, that I care, and I'm real interested, and I'm here. Did I get that right? Yes. Okay, what else? And she goes on. Did I get that right? No, you missed this detail. Okay, give it to me and play it back until she gets to the end. And I say, how does it make you feel? And I listen. And then I try to find a feeling word too. Does that make you feel sad? Did it make you feel discounted? Did it make you feel unloved? Now it's my turn. I think you're talking about Wednesday when I shot pool with Dan. She says, oh, okay, Wednesday when you shot pool with Dan. And now I tell my side, and she plays it back exactly as. And then we talk about my feelings. Now it's her turn again with the new information. And she says it, and I play it back, and we get to the end. Now it's my turn again. We do that till we're both finished. And she and I did a workshop on this at a rather large conference some time ago. And someone from the audience asked, when's the last time you used that? And the answer was about 2 weeks ago. They
Mm.
said, what was the argument about? And neither one of us knew. And it
Remember.
wasn't because of the advancing years, it was because we had finished. We had finished. Got to get out of the business of trying to be right. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal experience. And it's based on the St. Francis prayer, to love and to be loved, to understand and to be understood. Phenomenal experience.
You actually use the prayer in it, or you just use that as a the framework?
It was a framework. That's what it was based on. It was actually
Yeah.
a gift from another very gifted therapist friend of mine. Gave that to us
Well,
and we used it very successfully. Um,
these a lot of this stuff is getting passed around as tribal knowledge, and it's never really gets documented. Uh, there's things we that I've been taught in when I utilize the 12 steps that are not in. They're not. We say do it by the book. That are not in the book. But the tools worked really good for me. And what the book tells me to do is pass on what was passed on to me, if it worked. And so, we do some things. We've moved forgiveness prayers to the 8 step. And when that prayer, like you were talking about, and run down your list, then, and one of that pieces is preparing to do the amends. And I've heard from you, if I'm carrying something in my heart, I can't go make amends with you if I'm still got something lingering. So that's doing that prayer work right before I'm going out to see you. Also, let's universe, God, whatever you want to call it, help me see what I had done where I might have harmed them. And then that same thing. And and we do a thing called a God inventory up there someplace before I make a third step decision, where we list out what we think God is and isn't. And we scratch off all the stuff that we don't want, and what's left is the things that we do want our heart have. And and I'm sitting here with this book going, man, if I'd have had this tool when I was working with so and so, I wonder if we could have got him moved out of that anger and get some of that worked out. So I'm always trying to find new things to put in my toolbox, and just in an effort to be helpful, to be to help people.
That forgiveness thing you're talking about, I think eight's a good place. I always used it in four
Hmm.
because I can't look from my own mistakes through the lens of the things I think you did wrong. I have
Yeah,
to
right.
I have to receive the gift of forgiveness before I can see it myself.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it's one of the worst mistakes a person can make is go to make amends with someone you're still mad at.
Mhm.
Or I don't have to be purdy.
Yeah, yeah. And I find that there's been examples where I didn't think a guy was ready yet, but he was bound and determined. And then when it went and it blew up, I didn't have to I didn't have to think too hard to figure out what went wrong. He's still mad at her, him, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And that anger never serves us well. And
Never.
it all comes from judgment. It all comes from judgment.
Yeah.
There were a couple of other things I talked about in the book that I think there's a lot of confusion on. One of them is boundaries.
Mm.
Um, Boundaries are not designed to change anyone else's behavior. I have my own definition of a boundary. It's a premeditated, healthy response to a fully expected, unhealthy stimulus. I'll
Mm.
give you an example. Years ago, a lady came to me and said, my mother in law comes to town, drives about 2 hours, takes over the house, excuse me, and punishes our 7-year-old son. And we set a boundary. We told her not to do it, and she did it anyway. I said, you didn't set a boundary. You made a request, and it was denied. The boundary is not going to change. Something else going to change your behavior. So we talked about what they might do. She and her husband got together on it. The next time mother-in-law came to town and punished the son, they went to her bedroom, packed her stuff, put it in the car, and she was in the car leaving in 5 minutes. They said,
Mm.
we told you you can't do that here, and you can't. You're leaving now. You can come back another time, but you're leaving. The mother-in-law still visits, but she does not take over the house and she does not punish the child. They changed their behavior. Another one is acceptance. Acceptance is a funny thing. Acceptance, I think, is initially is a state of mind, it's a decision. It can eventually become a state of spirit, which is something I've been studying recently. Like
Mm.
forgiveness is a state of spirit. I can't change my spirit. I don't have the power. I can change my actions today. As I've done that day after day after day, I've become changed. I don't change them. I can't. But on the acceptance thing, I automatically accept everything I like. You're going to let me into traffic? I accept. You're going to pay me more money? I accept. It's only the things I don't like that I have to put any effort into accepting. So quit trying to like something to accept it. It's not necessary. It's not even requested. Not even requested. I get a limited amount of spiritual energy on any given day. If I squander it on things over which I have no power, I will not have enough spiritual energy left for my own assignments today. So if I've got power in this thing, then I need to be in the game. But if I don't need to squander my spiritual energy on it. And that's initially a decision, and then eventually it becomes a way of life to where I just don't squander my energy. I don't focus on the negative. I'm not interested in the negative. If you ask the people I'm closest to, I'll listen to the problem once, and they will argue with that. You won't even listen to it once. You want us to cut out details. I said, no, the problem bores me to death. I'll talk solution with you till dawn, but I'm sick of the problem already. If the solution were contained in the problem, we would have found it by now. Another one I think that I also talk about in the book is touch.
Mm.
We're herd animals. Herd animals get something out of bump up against each other. And the skin is the largest organ in the body. We have a need to be touched. You're probably familiar with King Frederick's experiment from way back when, where they separated newborn babies into two groups. One group are going to touch all we can, the other group are not going to touch at all. They had to discontinue because the group not being touched was getting sick and dying.
Yeah.
And that need to be touched never goes away. As an adult male, there are not many ways for me to get my touch need met. The obvious one is to have sex with a female. But there's several others. One is the rough house with a pet, a cat, a large
Mm,
dog, roll around on the floor with a child, um, a contact sport, football, rugby, hockey.
mm,
Watch them. You will see if you will watch that they get something out of bumping against each other. I learned this years ago. I was flying a 400 jet for the Air Force. We flew all over the world. I mean, literally. And coming home from about a 10-day trip one time, landing down into home station about 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. And I got a pretty young wife at home, and I got a real good plan for what I'd like to be doing about a minute and a half after I get home. I have a plan. And I walk in the house just in time to see my 1-year-old son get up from his nap. And what I want to do is going to have to wait.
mm.
And with a big smile. I loved him then. I love him now. So I'm down on the floor wrestling around with my son. And about 20 minutes later, forgive the language, I don't know how else to say it, but 20 minutes later, I'm not horny anymore. And I had not had sex with my son. I'd gotten my touch need met. And from inside, I can't tell the difference between the need to have sex and the need to be touched. They feel the same from the inside. They feel the same from the inside. And we tell new people new guys to leave the ladies alone. We better make sure they're getting their touch need met. You see me around some of the men I'm close to, you see us hug. A hug is different from 3 pats on the back. It's different. And
Yeah.
that is so critically important that we get that done.
We're a hugging home group. People come new to our meetings, they looking at us like, what are these guys doing? And you can always tell, always
Yeah.
say like the new guys just want to land a butterfly on my shoulder.
Yeah.
Me and
I never heard of. I like that. Yeah.
me and my close friends, we're squeezing, embracing one another.
Yeah.
You were talking about that when during the talk about the crying and not patting and not rubbing and not doing any of that kind of business. You do a little bit of it, but like when Shane hugs me, he's like a bear. I'm worried he's gonna hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah. Embrace is a spectacular word. That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
when a guy asks me to sponsor him, I say, all right, I'm fixing to hug you and I'm going to hold you till you quit thrashing. Just, and you're going to get used to this because this is what we're going to do. And don't worry, I ain't working your side of the street. I'm a raging heterosexual. It's not in here, but we have this touch need, and it's
Yeah.
critically important that we get it met.
That's really interesting. I like that. I'm beginning thinking, are my touch needs being met at the moment? And I don't know that they are outside the men in my home group.
Yeah, we're back talking about anger again. If we don't get that touch need met, there's going to be an undercurrent of anger. There's something that releases with an embrace. Thank you for the word. I'll be using that.
I didn't have a lot of physical touch in my growing up life, from my parents. They weren't real physically. They told me they loved me, but I don't remember, and I just because how we are. Just because I'm sitting here saying that doesn't mean I'm right. But
Yeah, I have the
I
same
don't
experience.
remember it.
Yeah, I do not remember it. I know my dad. I never hugged. That was a big deal when I hugged him the first time. I was 30, probably 30, maybe a little older, and I just kept telling myself I'm going to have to hug him. I've got to do it. I got to do it. I just couldn't do it.
Mm,
And he visited one weekend, and I swore to myself it's going to be this weekend. And he was about to get in the car to leave on Sunday afternoon. I said, just a minute, and I just grabbed him,
mm.
and it changed our relationship forever.
Yeah,
After
yeah,
that, every time,
yep,
every time, it's a need
yep.
we all.
Uh, Before getting my head screwed on, and I didn't do that. Somebody else got it screwed on. Uh, I realized that that I wasn't hugging my children, because of being sick would put this barrier around me where I really wasn't letting anybody get close to me. So I changed that. My 87-year-old father lives with me, And I got the best room. I got 21-year-old son, my 55-year-old, and my 87-year-old dad. We all lived together here in the bachelor pad together, and I made that hugging something we do now. They won't instigate it, but I will.
It's a critical piece. It's a critical piece,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't take anything for it.
yeah.
And
I feel
it's kind of interesting. I always wanted to be. I've been a great actor all my life, pretending to be the guy that I thought you wanted me to be, which means I'm a different guy to everybody. Uh, a fella I shook hands with one time was affectionately known as Dr. Paul. Said, "I'm not very impressed by schizophrenics. That's only two personalities. If I could get down to two, I'd still be out there.
yeah.
I got hundreds I haven't even used yet. I think I have two. So I come to you nice people. I thought, man, I'm going to have to be who I want to be. Well, that doesn't work either. I got to be who God put me here to be. You asked me the question about this picture over my shoulder. That's me at about 4 years old. And some time not too long after that picture was taken, some things happened to him that should never happen to any child. The last time I was between wives, I'm currently between wives, or I'm out of the wife business, but I'm not sure which it is, but I'm currently unwifed. But the last time I was between wives, took that picture out of my wallet and blew up like you see, 2 feet wide by 3 feet tall. I didn't know why. I put it on the wall at the foot of the bed, and it was the last thing I saw every night, the first thing I saw every morning. Did not know why I did it.
Hmm.
And one day I was looking at that and I wondered, who would he have become? If all those things had not happened, who would he have become? Now, by this time, through the forgiveness process we talked about, I've been emotionally disconnected from all the things they did to me. And through making amends, I've been emotionally disconnected from all the things I did. But my question remained, if those had not happened to him, if he'd received all the nurturing and guidance and love he clearly deserved, who would he have become? I got
Hmm.
my answer. The answer is that's my assignment. My assignment is to become the man he would have become. The only question is, am I willing to do the work?
Hmm.
So far, I have been. And I'd like to tell you about him. He woke up every morning just excited to be alive. He was fascinated by simple things, sunrises, butterflies. He loved everyone. He was completely unconcerned with his future because he had complete faith in those who provided for him. He was in touch with his emotions. He never used bad language. He laughed easily and frequently. He judged no one. He was open to learn. He was happy, joyous, and free, living each moment as it came, walking in the sunlight of the Spirit. And that's what you've done with me. How do you repay a debt like that? Well, I attempted to make a little repayment by writing this last book. That's my sixth one.
Hmm.
And I've got two more in process.
All right.
And I got another writing assignment about 2 o'clock in the morning a couple of nights ago. I keep a pad by the bed. I read a biography of Henry Ford one time, and he said he had some of his best ideas in the middle of the night, so he kept a pad by the bed. So I keep a pad by the bed and a pen that I can light up by pushing the button.
Oh,
And I've got a new assignment, and I'm capturing it. I talked about it a little bit earlier, and we'll see. We'll see.
yeah. We'll see. I
Yeah.
My first real boss gave me that assignment. We were in the engineering world, and he said the same thing. He probably got it from Henry Ford, but he asked us as a pretty smart fella. He came into the local vocational school here and picked three guys and put us in competition with one another. Hired all three of us and told we're going to got 90 days, and I'm going to keep one of you. And at the end of the 90 days, he kept all three of us. But he had he had us working hard and having fun with it at the same time. Uh,
Yeah.
they get these teachers that come through. I can't. Me and my friends, we use a term. We have a phrase that we use with that come from you, and we'll just ask each other once in a while, and it'll be out of the blue. Is it okay to fish here? And when I hear that on that tape, just saying it starts bringing tears into my eyes to that awesome story. Uh, and that's the reason I listen to that whatever's in whatever kind of magic is in that 5 hour talk uh, touches me at my core over and over, and I can hear it. I can hear it. I could play it today, and I will listen to that story, and I will cry. It
Yeah.
is so many cool little things I drag along with me that I pass on that I got from you. That's what I told you last time. I don't let my guys listen to your tapes until we're through with the work.
I'm riding the shoulders of the real giants of this thing. I've hunted them down, asked them questions. It's been such a blessing for me. I was not looking to be a teacher. I just wanted to get, I'm just greedy. I just want everything they got,
Yeah,
everything they got.
yep. That
And
that
I,
old thing about not deserving that's I don't believe that you were
uh,
one bit. I deserve it all. Um,
absolutely right.
and I can't even recognize this man hardly today from the guy that I was before. You know, it doesn't seem like a real thing. And even to the point, and I say this quite often, I've lived in New Albany, Indiana all my life. You would get to know some people. People I will go to high school with do not recognize me physically anymore. And if I look at a picture of myself, I don't see anything all that much different. But out in the world, I'll have to remind them who I am, and I think that's a little pat on the back just to keep me remembering just how far I've come doing this stuff. And there's the thing about it is it's so fun. You know, I mean, it's not fun to see these wrecked lives. That's not fun. Uh, but to see them get, I look at it like a slow motion photography of a flower blooming. I get to watch them come back to life. And I think one of my number one assignments today is to help some of these struggling men be good dads, because when they've gone through this work, their relationship with their children and stuff completely changes. And
Yeah.
you'd said something earlier about you know, I listened to a guy on YouTube and he'd said something. They were talking about the homeless and the PTSD and the drug addiction and the alcoholism. And this guy said, I think what we got is a crappy parenting problem at the core of all this. Because when you interview people, it almost always goes back to that. But I have something in me that wants to defend my parents. You know, there's some allegiance to them. And you know, so one of the things about working with guys is teach them that they can have that and still heal. You don't have to sign off on what they did, like you said earlier. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. But we are going to face it and go through it. We've adopted the buffalo as our motto, and you've probably heard the buffalo story about that. It's the only wild animal that will put its nose into the storm. Most all other wild animals, and I don't know that to be true, but it's a neat story. Uh, most of the wild animals will run away from the storm, and we say we buffalo it. You know, we're going to turn our faces into whatever it is in front of us and get through it. It's a quicker way to get the sunshine on the other side than allow the cloud to chase you all your life.
You talked about looking different. It's one of the things I tell people as you go through this forgiveness process, if you will do it, and you may pray that list multiple times without checking any. Years ago, I worked with a guy that had 1,200 resentments on his list.
Whoa.
I've worked two so far that had 1,200. And he prayed his list 2.5 times before he checked off the first one. I kept
Wow.
saying the same thing. I don't care. I do not care how long. This is the most important thing you'll do in your entire life. It's more important than life or death. And halfway through the third time, he started checking them. And
Mm.
I haven't seen him in quite a while. I ran into him 2 summers ago. They're all checked.
All right.
And they were
Very
before I
cool.
quit working with him. But I tell people, as you start checking them, people are going to see a difference. You are going to look different to them. It will be visible. And they're going to say, they're not going to know what it is. They're going to say, have you lost weight? And the correct answer is, yes, I have. Because
Yeah.
that stuff is weighing down your soul.
Yeah.
And when that ice melts, when that sunlight melts that ice and your soul becomes buoyant, it will be visible. And that's what we were put here to be, I believe, is buoyant souls.
Love that term.
Yeah. Thank you.
Buoyant.
Mhm.
Good hell. Well, it's a pleasure to get with you. I will put this stuff on here. If there's we're about a little over an hour now, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I could sit and talk to you all day long. Uh,
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll publish another book here as soon as I can and let you know.
yeah, you keep doing that. Now I got 5 other books to go look up. Because I don't have, I don't think I do. I was looking at
They're
my
all
pile of books the
they're
other
all on
day.
Amazon.
Are they? Okay. I
Mhm.
was looking at my piles of books the other day and I started wondering if I shouldn't start like passing some of them on to other people because I think I've got what I need to get out of that book now and start paying it forward. And one guy told me, he said, "I'll take them all." And I said, "Well, that's not what I was saying. I'll, we'll hand them out one at a time."
Dan, I'll never be able to thank you. It's been a wonderful experience for me to sit here with you, to have the chance to just let these things flow. I did not work from notes today, but just sort of let it flow. What a joy this was. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I got this is this stuff is so fun. It's
Who'd have
why
thunk
would
it?
I
Who'd
yeah,
have
why
thunk it?
would I I said the miss in the beginning. I'll never have any more fun. I'll never have any friends and life is gonna be boring.
And I'm going to be
Yep.
hanging out with dull people.
Yeah, right. Yep. It's
I know.
not just the opposite. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you more than I could ever tell you. You've impacted my recovery at a level that's quite hard to believe. We did it without even knowing each other. Uh,
How about that?
some tapes out there in the world, and I'll get to. All my friends are ordering a book, so that'll get you 50 or 60 more of them anyway.
Blessings upon you. Thanks.
Have a good day, Scott.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Always tried to be just who they wanted.